It's my great pleasure to be joined today with our Attorney General, the Honorable Jason Miyares. Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's fantastic to be with you.
A few minutes to talk to our credit union members.
Of which I am one.
Which is fantastic. You know, it's my personal mission that everyone across the Commonwealth at least should have the option to belong to a credit union. And we appreciate what banks do too, but we think credit unions do it better. So thank you very much. But we thought it would be great to talk a little bit today about a few issues that do have an impact on credit unions. But first off, maybe we could start talking a little bit about what happened in the most recent 2023 General Assembly session. Our governor just finished his veto session, vetoed 5 additional bills. It was a short session this time around.
Yep.
But kind of from your perspective, what new laws are going to have the biggest impact on Virginians in general on July 1?
Well, I mean, I think you could have obviously they haven't done the budget. That will be the biggest impact. I know they have a bit of an impasse. We have a record surplus, but it's surplus over $3 billion right now. The governor is pushing for about $1 billion in tax relief. When you look at what's the number one reason why people are leaving Virginia, the number one reason they cite is cost of living. Tax relief is important. I think we're going to get there personally. I think it's hard to argue that the Commonwealth of Virginia can't afford any tax relief when you continue to run these large $1 billion surpluses. I know for me personally, a big issue for us was declaring fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction because we have an addiction crisis. The overdose deaths in our country in 1992 were 5,000. Last year was 108,000. And for the credit union members, I think it doesn't affect their employees. It does. It's estimated that roughly 45% of the tens of millions of able-bodied adult individuals that are not working because of addiction.
Wow.
And fentanyl, that right now is taking away too many innocent Virginians' lives. And we've also been able to partner with the General Assembly to set up the Opioid Abatement Authority. We have over $1 billion of money coming back to Virginia in settlements from lawsuits with some of these big pharmaceutical companies dated back to OxyContin and some of these others. And so I just think that's another step in pushing back on the scourge of addiction. Very proud of the work that the General Assembly in a bipartisan manner passed the organized retail crime bill. Makes it a felony for those convicted of that crime of basically stealing a certain amount, $5,000 worth of merchandise over the course of 90 days. Because what we've seen is organized retail crime has exploded in Virginia. It's affected almost every retailer. It is a huge problem, so we're proud on that. So we'll know more when the budget passes, but I think those are strong substantive issues that the General Assembly has taken up. We're a part-time legislature. I used to serve in that body, so I have great respect and still have a lot of friends on both sides of the aisle there. And they do their job. They wrapped up. They went home, and now it's up to the budget conferees. We'll get a budget soon, though.
Yeah, that's good news to hear. I think everyone's been certainly waiting and wondering, and obviously it impacts what happens in the second part of the year as well. One thing that didn't pass were several bills that were introduced relative to creating a retail marijuana market in Virginia. And for credit unions, it really comes down to if this market ultimately gets created and businesses want to bank legitimately, what happens at the federal level and at the state level. And there's a bill called the SAFE Act, which is Congress has been considering for a number of years. It would protect financial institutions from potential legal liability. But do you think we're ever going to see a marijuana market in Virginia? It's certainly controversial and
well, I mean, I think if you see from the polling, it's clear that a majority of Virginians support at least the concept of a legally regulated retail market for cannabis. I will say that I think when they passed the bill a couple of years ago, they did it in as almost an unworkable way as possible.
Yeah.
They legalized the possession. So up to a certain amount, it's no fine at all. Up to a pound, it's a simple fine, the same fine you would get for walking your dog without a leash. And a pound of marijuana is a lot of marijuana. And then after that, it's possession with intent to distribute, but they never legalized the actual licenses. And so I heard one colleague refer to it as the Street Dealers Protection Act. Because what has happened is when you legalize possession, you don't legalize the retail market. Inevitably, what has happened is been a boon for the black market, and the General Assembly kicked the can down the road on how they're going to determine these licenses, and they were put in a lot of language about DEI, and it's kind of, I think, made it more complicated than it has. And so what I told the General Assembly, I voted against the bill because I thought it was unworkable, and what I told them was I'm no longer in that position. I don't pass the bills, I enforce the bills. But what I've communicated to them is figure this out. I mean, Thomas Jefferson called the states the laboratories of democracy for a reason. Figure out what states have figured this out in an appropriate way. I do know overarching, our number one goal though is to protect kids. You've seen an explosion of this use among our children. These fake cannabis products, they look like Doritos or Oreos, or instead of Chips Ahoy, they call it Trips Ahoy. It looks exactly the same packaging you have in the store. Those have popped up. Our Consumer Protection Division has been handling that as well. And so my number one goal, what I told them is find a path forward. My goal is to protect minors and also go after these shops selling these fake products that are not only in violation of copyright laws, they're in violation of Virginia's consumer protection laws as well.
That was a very nice segue, thank you very much, into consumer protection.
Yes.
And it's, credit unions exist to provide provident credit. Credit unions are not-for-profit member cooperatives and really value trying to help their members and really feel that they fill an important role in financial consumer services. But there has been a lot of legal back and forth with the CFPB, which has a potentially tough impact on credit unions from a compliance standpoint. I believe last year you signed on to an amicus brief with other state AGs relative to the constitutionality of the CFPB funding structure. The Supreme Court is now going to take that up. Do you have an opinion on where we're going to end up? I think everyone thinks something different with this one.
Trying to predict the Supreme Court is like trying to predict the weather. Good luck trying to figure that out, right? I don't know. I know from an overarching theme, it seems that the Supreme Court has been taking a closer look at what is the growth of the administrative state. There's a lot of reasons why Washington is struggling right now. I think one of it is you've seen an explosion of these unelected administrative bodies that will promulgate rules and regulations that will affect every aspect of our lives, and they're not elected officials. And what has happened is, and this is, I know enough members that work on and vote on Capitol Hill, a lot of members of Congress like it this way. They would much rather use the administrative state so they don't have to make card votes. I don't think that's healthy for democracy. So, we have looked not just at this, at others, is, when have you delegated your powers to the point where there's no accountability? And
And I'll just pause very quickly, so for those in the audience who aren't fully keyed in on this, the CFPB has a really weird mechanism for being funded. It gets all of its dollars from the Federal Reserve, and it basically requests that money. But on top of that, the Federal Reserve itself is self-funded because it fees some of the institutions that it regulates. It also has a pretty vigorous product line relative to payments that it receives monies for, and then excess goes back into the Treasury. So the Attorney General is referencing that. It really is quite an indirect method for getting money.
that, and it is a position where the head of the CFPB is essentially appointed by the president, and Congress does not have the ability to terminate this person. But you've seen that throughout the federal government of unelected bodies that have promulgated rules and regulations. In this regards, I can think of very few unelected administrative agencies that have a greater impact on Americans' daily life than the CFPB, because getting credit, I don't care if it's a car loan or a mortgage or a line of credit for your business, that can have a monumental ripple effect throughout the economy. And I've always been a big believer the best way to cure democracy is maybe more democracy. And so when you see the totality of what's happening in Washington, I think we should have more involvement by our elected representatives, not less.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Governor Youngkin had a huge focus, of course, on economic development and making sure Virginia is on the right path.
Yeah.
Certainly we had some ripples with the SVB crisis. Credit unions weathered it fine. I think most banks in Virginia did too. Any kind of closing comments on where we are in Virginia in terms of economic health and any concerns?
Well, I think there's two parallel tracks that you're seeing right now. We are doing very, very well. I think there's some things the governor's trying to do to make us better. The reality is we're competing with 49 other states. He's had some huge announcements from Raytheon to Lego, and a lot of big investments here. A lot of individuals want to bring data centers. We have a lot of advantages in Virginia that are very attractive. We have first of all, our natural beauty is unsurpassed, but our workforce is one of the most educated, advanced workforces of any Commonwealth. We have a fantastic system of higher ed, but there are also challenges. In the last several years, North Carolina has both cut their corporate and their personal income taxes twice. Virginia stayed stagnant. And so we are seeing some things go to North Carolina that has not come to us. And I think when you look at when people are looking to locate a business, they're looking at what's your tax structure, what's your regulatory structure, and what's the litigation climate there. In my opinion, regulation, taxation, litigation can literally reach out and strangle the lifeblood of the greatest job-creating engine the world has ever seen, which is the American entrepreneur. And so I am a firm believer in when you look at any new regulation, any new tax, or making it easier to sue, you have to keep that in mind. Because I think one of the worst problems you have in government in general, you see it in Washington, you see it at all levels, candidly, is there are a lot of elected and non-elected officials that assume, well, if I have good intentions, it will guarantee good results. And it seems like only in government we allow people to get away with that. You don't measure your job by your intentions, you measure it by results. Same with the military, same with the sports team. It's only somehow in government we've gotten away with this notion of we're going to measure our successes by our intentions, not the actual impact that it's having on credit unions, on banks, on small business owners, on the guy working down a Newport News shipbuilding, right? And so I think that's critically important, and that's a mindset the governor has as somebody who knows what it is to create jobs and create economic activity. So we're super excited that remain one of the best states in the country to do business. But it's not about where we are now, it's where we are 5, 10, 15 years from now. And other states are absolutely doing an enormous amount of work. I do think one of the most historic investments, what this governor is doing, is he's putting record investments in the Port of Virginia, which your memberships may not think it's that important. I do, but it's over 10% of our state's GDP. And we enter this era of globalization, which can be so disruptive, we could take advantage of it because we have perhaps the best deep water port in the entire East Coast. We're able to handle cargo no one else can, and that is in turn bringing investment into Virginia. And the Port of Virginia goes past Richmond, so it affects the entire huge chunk of the state. And so we're excited about that, excited moving forward. We have a lot more work to go.
That's fantastic. On behalf of all of our members, thank you for all of your work, whether it's fighting crime, whether it's looking at these other sometimes esoteric issues. We really appreciate it and look forward to the rest of 2023.
Thank you. It's one of the great joys of this job is being able to travel around and meet everyday Virginians, the incredible quiet heroes that do such incredible work. And if there's anything that kind of upsets me at how the media kind of covers where we are in our country, what I realize when I meet everyday Virginians is we are at our core a good and decent and even noble people. We all have friends that maybe think differently than we do politically or on issues of faith or some of the big issues of life. But that's okay. The beauty of this country is the fact that we can bring people from so many different backgrounds and so many different perspectives, and we can learn how to live together as Americans. And I think sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that in the craziness of the 24-hour news cycle or some of the angry voices on social media. But sometimes it's important to pause and recognize this is a remarkable country with extraordinary opportunity. And this is an amazing state with a richness that no other state can even compare. And I tell my daughters all the time, gratitude is the most underrated of all human traits. Ingratitude is the ugliest. I just think it's important sometimes for us to step back and say, wow, we live in an amazing time, in an amazing place, in an amazing country. And it's great to be with you.
Thank you so much. That is wonderful, wonderful closing thoughts. Thank you.